My name is James. For obvious reasons, I don't really want to give my last name, as well as other passport data. I have my own business, even if it is small, but it brings me a good income. I will begin my story perhaps with the divorce of my parents. My mom's name is Sarah. You shouldn't mention your father too much. My mother divorced him when I was only 8 years old. She did it in the summer while I was at my grandmother's. I arrived, and Dad was gone. I was very upset at the time, but now I understand that it was the right step. My father drank heavily. This is a common thing in our village, but if most women hope that their husband will stop drinking someday or just tolerate it, saying, let him be like that, my mom decided to divorce. After the divorce, my father moved in with his mother and began to drink even more. He moved from one job to another, but did not stay anywhere for long. He wasn't interested in me at all. I haven't seen him since. My mother and I have been living together ever since. At first, it was difficult for us. Work has always been difficult. Mom worked at the regional center. It took a lot of time to get there and back. I saw her only in the morning and in the evening. At first, I sat at school in the afternoon, then again at school in the extended day group. When I did return home, my mother was not there yet, and it was only late in the evening that she returned. Despite the fact that she had been away from home for so long, they paid little money. I didn't have very much of what most of my classmates who lived in full families had. I didn't realize then that a cool phone or some other expensive gadget wouldn't make a person cool at all, and I suffered a lot from the fact that I can't boast of a fashionable laptop or something like that. Sometimes I would go up to my mother and demand to buy me some fancy phone and cry when she refused. Then my mother explained to me simply and clearly that I didn't really need a new phone, and if I did, then I had to earn it myself because she didn't have any money. That she already provides everything for me alone. She has to work from morning to evening, and I should be grateful to her for that. I didn't get it at first. I even tried to throw scandals at her, but Mom just ignored them. If I was very violent, she punished me. For example, she forbade playing on the computer or watching TV or deprived of sweets, and I resented her. Oh, what a fool I was then. He did not understand that the ability to achieve his own goals is the most valuable thing that his parents can give a child. Now, I think it would have been better for her to beat me up then, but Mom didn't beat me. She never beat me at all. Somehow, she still managed to convey to me the idea that I should achieve everything myself instead of crying and asking her. Over time, I finally understood, of course. Understanding alone did not make the iPhone appear in my pocket, but I've already stopped suffering from it. Now, when ridiculed for having a shameful phone, I did not hesitate to answer that fashionable phones were just unnecessary nonsense. My opponents were angry, but they couldn't object because the phones were really bought with their parents' money, and they couldn't say what real benefit a fancy phone would have. Sometimes they even got into a fight, but iPhones don't save you from blows to the teeth at all, and they quickly fell behind me. Surprisingly, after that, my prestige in the eyes of my classmates rose, even without any iPhones. But with my classmates and other girls, I somehow didn't get along. I was generally shy of girls, and even when they themselves tried to somehow establish contact with me, I avoided it with all my might. Shyness caused me terrible suffering, almost physical pain. Probably many people will find this surprising, but on the one hand, I really wanted love and romance, and on the other, as soon as I noticed a familiar girl on the street somewhere in the distance, I crossed to the other side of the road or turned off somewhere altogether. I must say that my mother is a very beautiful woman. She gave birth to me at the age of 18. Now she is respectively 36, but she looks much younger, mainly because she looks after herself very well. She regularly exercises. She has just the perfect figure. Mom is of average height. She has long brown hair and brown eyes. Since then, Mom has become the main character of my fantasies. Maybe because I didn't have a sister, and it was obviously far away from the appearance of my daughter too, and therefore I couldn't do anything with my daughter or my sister. Of course, I really wanted to do something strange with my mother, not only in fantasy, but also in reality. I wanted to go crazy and tremble, but I was afraid to even think about confessing to my mom. My mother and I have always had a very warm and trusting relationship, but despite this, I was still afraid. What scared me was not that she would scream and swear, but that our relationship would deteriorate. And so it went on for a long time. Besides, I had read books about relationships, and I knew that women mostly expect initiative from men. I also dreamed that one day I would have the courage to tell my mother myself, but dreams are dreams, and in reality, I was still afraid to show my feelings somehow more. Moreover, I even began to avoid my mother's embrace. Meanwhile, our business slowly began to improve. Mom found a new place of work, also in the district center, but a little closer, and most importantly, they paid much more there. We could buy a lot of things. Now, I still didn't have an iPhone, but my mom gave me a new phone and a new computer and also a lot of household tools, a drill, a puncher, and so on. I must say that I tried to help with the housework before. I couldn't fix complicated electronics like televisions, but I could do all sorts of relatively simple men's things. To replace the mixer, to put a new switch, to hang a shelf on the wall, or to rehang a fallen-off door at the closet. All this was not a problem for me. It gave me pleasure to do such things, and how happy and grateful my mother was when I did something like that. Of course, I was happy too. I like doing things, but there weren't many of them, and then there's the purchase of a new tool, which of course you want to use in business. And I went on. I started coming up with something myself. In addition to the apartment, we had a room in the basement where we kept our supply of vegetables for the winter. First, I made myself a small workshop there. Now all the tools were stored in one place, and it became more convenient to work. Then I made some shelves on the walls and hung them in the apartment. Mom liked it, and then something happened that triggered a change in my life. I decided to make a shelf not to hang it on the wall, but to sell it. I made it, varnished it, placed an ad on the website of our district, put up a small price, and besides, informed me that for a small fee, I can hang myself. The buyer was found very quickly and even paid for the installation. Soon, I was happily shaking my first honestly earned money in front of my mother. Mom was thrilled, and me too. What hopes opened up before me? By that time, I didn't want an iPhone or any other electronic phone. I already understood that I didn't need a cool phone, and my computer was completely fine with me, but there was one thing I always dreamed of: a motorcycle. There was a lot of money needed for a motorcycle, but if I can make furniture for sale, sooner or later I'll save up for a motorcycle. My mother did not share my joy from the motorcycle. She said that I didn't need it because you can get anywhere by buses and trains, and I have nowhere to put it. But this time she couldn't convince me. After all, a motorcycle is not at all like a bus. This is freedom. You can go wherever you want and whenever you want, and where to put it, I will solve this problem somehow. And I set to work with renewed vigor. The second and third shelves quickly left after the first one. Then I started experimenting, making other shelves, raising the price, writing ads in a different way, and of course to do something else according to the drawings and magazines like the Home Master. I managed to make an entire bed. This time I did not set a low price, but advertised his product well. I wrote that it was only made of natural wood, very durable, and so on. The bed was not bought immediately, but I sold it for more than half of my mother's salary. With this money, it was already possible to buy an inexpensive motorcycle, but I didn't want a bad one, but a good one. And besides, it was necessary to build a garage, or rather a motorcycle shed. It wasn't difficult for me. I didn't think that building a garage would be much more difficult than a large closet, but it took time, and my mother was no longer happy with my earnings. As the prospect of buying a motorcycle became more real, Mom became more and more worried. She tried to talk me out of it many times, but in general, all her arguments boiled down to one thing, to the fact that a motorcycle is a very dangerous transport and I will definitely crash on it. It didn't convince me. I told you that you can drive carefully, that there are motorcyclists who have been riding motorcycles for many years and are alive and well. But my mother was not convinced by my arguments any more than I was convinced by her arguments. We each had our own opinion. Mom tried to dissuade me, but I continued to save money and materials for the construction of a barn. In the spring, when I turned 18, several important events took place. Firstly, from the first days of spring, I started building. I was going to buy a motorcycle in the summer. I've even started looking after him. My mother was upset when she found newspapers in my possession in which advertisements for the sale of motorcycles were underlined. I decided to build the barn entirely out of wood, using curbstones laid on the ground instead of the foundation, which I bought back in winter. I built the timber frame in just a couple of days. All that remained was to slowly sheath it with boards and hang the door. Secondly, our military commissar decided to personally talk to future recruits, including me. I don't know if it was his personal initiative or if that's what they do in all military enlistment offices. I received a letter in which he invited me to come to the military enlistment office at any convenient time. He promised to introduce different branches of the armed forces and to help with the choice. Mom was not pleased with the invitation from the military commissar. The thought of me joining the army scared her. She tried to convince me to go to the 9th and 10th grades and then to the institute. The institutes give a reprieve from the army, but I thought, why would I do that? So many more years to study. It's a terrible bore. I can earn very well without it by selling my furniture. Go to college just to delay the army? What for? Sooner or later you'll have to go there anyway. Besides, the army seemed interesting to me. Guns have always attracted me. In kindergarten, I even dreamed of becoming a soldier, to serve in a real army, hold a real machine gun in your hands, ride an armored personnel carrier, or even a tank. Isn't it interesting? My mother's stories about the dangers and difficulties in the army did not impress me. Others serve somehow, in general. I also refused the institute and, of course, went to the military commissar. The military commissar seemed to me a very pleasant uncle, tall, fit, dressed in a beautiful uniform. He greeted me with a joyful smile and almost with open arms. He said that now many people are trying to evade military service, that it threatens prison, and it's better not to do it, that of course the choice is mine, but if I do not shy away from the draft, he will try to give me a small gift. He will allow you to choose a place of service at will, of course, from what will be available, and he had a lot of choices: automobile troops, tank troops, Navy, construction battalion, border guards. He told me briefly about all of them. He advised me not to go to the construction site at all. He said that there was nothing interesting there. Automotive ones are better there, and they can also teach you how to drive a car. The border guards have an interesting and responsible service, so the military commissar advised us to go there. However, I wanted to join the Navy. The military commissar immediately warned that it would be necessary to serve there for 3 whole years, but it didn't scare me. And when the military commissar showed photos of the ship that the guys from our area used to be called up to, and mentioned that recently this ship was carrying out the task of fighting pirates off the coast of Somalia, I firmly decided that I wanted to serve in the Navy. We parted after shaking hands, and Mom turned pale when I said that I had chosen the Navy. In her opinion, it was terrible. They served there for 3 years, and you can drown. This time, she even swore at me, but again this did not change my choice. Then Mom went to the military commissar herself. I don't know what they were talking about, but when Mom returned, she said that military service could be avoided by paying a certain amount for it right now, and this amount is a little more than what I have for a motorcycle, and that if I give her the money, she will arrange for me to be released from the draft. But I didn't agree to that. He said that there are still 3 years before the service, during which I will have time to ride a motorcycle, and then I'll serve in the Navy, sailing on a warship to the coast of Somalia, chasing pirates. It's a dream, and instead, am I being asked to just give money to get rid of it? No way. Another month and a half passed. I've almost finished the barn. Not a fortress, of course, but it should have been suitable for a motorcycle. Besides, I managed to sell a lot of my products, so the money should have been enough for a very good motorcycle. And then the third event happened. Richard crashed. Richard was a notorious bully. He was about 3 years older than me and just about a graduate from high school. I couldn't stand him. I was afraid and hated him. Richard was constantly picking on the guys from the lower grades, including me. He took the money and just mocked me. I didn't risk fighting with him. Not only was he 3 years older and much more massive, he was also completely bat. Richard had probably been riding a motorcycle since he was able to climb on it. At first, it was an old parent's motorcycle. Then his father gave him a new, terribly expensive, and powerful sports motorcycle. Richard's end was quite natural. Having accelerated well, he did not fit into the turn, or, rather, according to rumors, he did not notice the turn at all and continued to drive straight at full speed. He always considered the helmet to be unnecessary nonsense, and even if he didn't, it would hardly help him. My mother knew Richard and his parents well because they lived not far from us. She was invited to the funeral. When she came back from there, I was just finishing attaching the lock to the barn door. Mom asked me to come into the house and again began to convince me to give up buying a motorcycle. She thought that when I heard about Richard's terrible tragedy, I would be scared and change my mind. But I was not impressed. To all my mother's stories, I only replied that Richard was not the most outstanding intellectual, and unlike him, I don't drink at all. Well, except for a glass of champagne for a holiday, and I'll drive carefully, so I'm not in any danger. Mom, of course, was not convinced again, and at the end of our conversation, she just burst into tears and left. And the next day, she came up to me and said that she was asking me very much, just begging me not to buy a motorcycle, and she's willing to do anything to get me to agree. At first, I answered without hesitation that I would never give up the motorcycle, but when Mom burst into tears again and left, I felt very sorry for her. I wondered if she could give me something that could serve as a replacement for a motorcycle, but nothing came to mind. The thought of buying a motorcycle did not please me when I remembered my crying mother. I've already decided to postpone the purchase for a while, a month or two, until my mother's memories of this Richard are dulled. And suddenly I had a crazy idea. What if I asked her to make love to me? She said anything I want. It was a chance that could not be missed. This will not happen in the future, so I decided to give it a try on the same day. However, I did not dare at night. I fantasized with might and main about how I would express my proposal to my mother. She would agree. And what would happen then? The next evening I went up to my mother. Mom, do you really say that you would do whatever you want if I didn't buy a motorcycle? Mom was interested. Yes, why is that? Whatever you want. If you want, I'll transfer our apartment to you. Do you want anything else? What do you want? Mom didn't know what else to offer me. Do you promise you won't tell anyone? Mom was a little puzzled, but agreed. Doubts began to gnaw at me at the last moment. And you promise that if you don't agree, you won't scold me. Mom thought even more. What do you want anyway? Promise me first. Okay, I promise. And I, having gathered my courage, still said, Can we make love with you? The mother was stunned. After a few seconds of silence, she said, Are you crazy or something? I'm your mother. No, of course not. Everything fell down. That's all, I said. Well, no, that's not it. And he went to his room. I didn't even go to dinner that day. And the next day at breakfast, I couldn't look my mother in the eye. We didn't talk much. I couldn't think of anything at school. After school, I did not run to my workshop, but wandered the streets for a long time. Then I came back and had lunch and started working on the barn again, although the shed was already ready, and the motorcycle could be put there. But I also improved it from the inside. He sealed up the cracks, hung shelves on the walls, pulled an electric wire from the house, and hung a lamp. I worked until nightfall. The next day passed in much the same way. But by the next evening I had a surprise waiting for me. Mom came into my room, sat on my bed, and said, You know, I've been thinking about your offer, and under certain conditions, I am ready to agree. My breath caught in my throat. Does she really agree? I somehow squeezed out. And what are the conditions? First of all, you will never tell anyone about this. Secondly, you will give me the money, and I will arrange with the military commissar to release you from the draft. Thirdly, even when you have money again, you will not buy a motorcycle and ride it. You have to promise me never to ride a motorcycle ever. It was bad, of course. I guessed that my mother would ask for the money, but I thought that after a while I would save up again, and I could still buy a motorcycle. And now it turns out that we have to give up the motorcycle forever. But still, I decided to bargain. I'll promise, but I also have a condition. I promise never to buy a motorcycle, and you promise to always make love to me whenever I want. Mom didn't hesitate. Good, I agree. You will have as much love as you want. I was elated. I asked her, "Mom, when is it? When will I give you the money?" I had the money in the bank. I should have gone there and picked them up. "No, I believe you anyway," Mom replied, "but I would like to prepare for this. Will you give me until tomorrow night? It's going to be Friday. You won't have to go to work the next day. You and I will have the whole night ahead of us." Of course, I agreed. All the next day I was just dreaming about what was coming. The lessons didn't come into my head again, and I ran away from the last ones. Instead, I went to the bank and withdrew the money. Mom also came home from work early, and now looking at me, she smiled mysteriously. When I gave her the money, she hugged me, not like before. We had dinner for a while, then I went to the bathroom and washed thoroughly. When I came out of the bathroom room, I saw that my mother had prepared her room. She put fresh, beautiful linen on my big bed. She hung decorations on the walls, all sorts of flowers. There is a bottle of red wine and a couple of glasses on the table. The overhead light was turned off. Instead, a small wall lamp with a candle-shaped lamp is turned on. This created a romantic twilight in the room, and at the same time, the lamp brightly illuminated the bed. "How beautiful," I said when I saw all this. Mom smiled. "Since I've agreed, I'd like you to have fun, so I'm trying to make sure you like everything." "Well, now I have to take a shower. Wait for me here." "Open the bottle for now, please," and she left. I opened the bottle quickly. The wait seemed very long to me. I listened to the water running in the bathroom and thought, is this really going to happen now, and my dream will finally come true? When Mom came out, I thought, now everything will definitely come true. The whole look of Mom left no doubt about what she was going to do. I said, "Wow, Mom, how cool you look. I'm very glad that you like me." Mom said, smiling, "I'm glad you like me." She sat down next to me at the table. She poured a little wine into the glasses. "Well, son, let's drink to our new relationship so that everything goes well with us." "Yes, Mom, let's have a drink." I took the glass and drank it. The wine was very tasty. There were very few degrees in it. It looked more like grape juice. It must have been expensive, I thought. Then Mom also drank her glass, put it down. But for all this, I was ready to give not only a motorcycle, but anything. But there was even more to Mom. "Well, how do you like me, Mom? You were just a miracle. I like you so much." "Yes, you seem to like me. Am I doing something wrong?" "No, Mom, it's great." After these words, we went into the room and carried out our plans. "Well, your wish has come true, Mom. I feel so good with you. I just can't describe it. You know, I liked it with you, too." I don't remember falling asleep, and when I woke up, my mother was no longer there. But there was a noise from the kitchen. Mom was cooking breakfast. Mom was stirring something in a frying pan. She was wearing yesterday's outfit. She turned off the heat under the pan and said, "Are you awake?" I made us breakfast. On Monday, my mother went to the military enlistment office. After a while, the military commissar called me and invited me to his place. I came to him, guessing what the conversation would be about exactly. He said that in my medical record, there was some kind of disease that does not interfere with ordinary life, but they do not call for military service with him. Therefore, unfortunately, the service will have to wait. I need to undergo an extended examination. He will tell me where then come to the military enlistment office for an examination, and then most likely I will be released from the draft altogether. Despite the fact that he said unfortunately, his face was joyful. It seems that a considerable part of the money intended for the motorcycle settled in the pockets of the military commissar personally. Well, that's fine. 2 years have passed since then. My mother and I have started a new life. As promised, she never refuses me. I am also fulfilling my promise. I never bought a motorcycle. I even dismantled the barn that was built for him. Then I came up with the idea to sell it. I was looking for a buyer for quite a long time. Then there was a lot of fuss in order to disassemble the shed, move it to a new place, and reassemble it there. But how much money I managed to get for it! The sale of the barn turned out to be a very profitable business. Then I had to build another shed, large and small. Wooden furniture is still selling well, and I decided to buy additional tools and make another workshop. I was released from the draft, as the military commissar said. I'm not going to go to college either. I already have a case. When I'm 18, I'm thinking of officially registering as an individual entrepreneur and starting my own company. The girls got better too. Now I can communicate with them normally, but it's still better with Mom.